production credit under REPI, Renewable Energy Production Incentive, and they get their renewable energy tax, renewable energy trade credits, regardless of whether this energy is produced at a time that it can be used. So you will be paying as consumers and taxpayers for that energy regardless of it's produced at a usable time or an unusable time. Stimulus, we got 1603, which is in lieu of the production tax credit. They were able to get their money up front as a cash grant, and the cash grants were about $1 million per turbine. It represented about $5 billion a year since 2008.
Many of you know the work that we did, that Congressman Klein did on the 1603 issue last fall. Going forward, the update that I have for you is that this fall, after the election, we expect at that time there will be an effort on the Hill to push forward an extension of tax package. And going forward, there has been some discussion about the PTCs, the production tax credits, that Christy was mentioning, being part of that tax package in itself. Congressman Klein is currently drafting and should have available next week for distribution a letter that will go to Chairman Dave asking that the production tax credits not be included in any tax extension package. And so we're hopeful that that letter will have some weight.
Out the production tax credit, once you qualify, lasts for 10 years. I've heard that the annual output is $5 billion a year, and that if we continued the production tax credit, that it would add about $1.5 billion per year to that federal. One of the issues that was talked about a lot, though, outside of the bill and in the bill was CBED, the Community-Based Energy Development Law in the state of Minnesota, and our Senator John Howe and Steve Drazkowski and Tim Kelly all worked closely trying to bring some accountability to the CBED issue this year. Letters back and forth with the Public Utilities Commission asking for clarification of ownership and monetary output from the AWA Goodhue project. It was clear from those communications and the additional information that came back to the Public Utilities Commission. It confirmed what we already knew, I think, a year ago, but it painted it in rather starker language, which is that at this point in time in the state of Minnesota, any project can qualify for CBED. The CBED language is originally designed to provide for Minnesota ownership and benefits to people who are residents of the state of Minnesota. It was an incentive to try to keep more of the ownership and benefits to Minnesota residents, but the law was altered several times, most recently in 2010. We believed at that time that the 2010 changes were a direct result of a letter written by Paul Reese to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission about this project, and in fact, when I spoke with the rates analyst at the Department of Commerce who analyzed the rates on this project, he said that the 2010 changes were a direct result of the AWA Goodhue project, something which our Lieutenant Governor Yvonne Pretner-Solon denied when I met with her.
We need to do things that are sustainable, and the wind is not sustainable without the federal subsidies and without taxpayer dollars. Wind energy at night actually has a negative value, so it actually costs them to get rid of wind electricity at night when the wind blows. We also don't count large hydro in Minnesota towards our energy mandates. So if we actually counted hydro electricity in our renewable energy mandates, we would already be meeting our renewable mandates. I'm a big advocate of local control. I believe townships and counties and municipalities, I mean, that's the people at the local level understands what the local constituents want. I do think we need to address the CBED issue. You know, community-based energy should be community-based energy.
And CBED is important because that's where the subsidy comes in. Now, if you're granted CBED, you can, as an organization, go to the electric company and really sell your electricity at a higher rate. That's why CBED status is so important to the project. Your ability to make money certainly is a lot greater because you're selling it at a higher rate. As Christy said, that's the dollars then that we're paying as ratepayers to subsidize the project. The other bill, 1891, was very, very simple because when we talked about local control, the language had one word in there that said the PUC shall consider. And the language that we moved to was simply that they must consider and act upon local ordinance. It was not a matter of we're trying to shut down alternative energy. It was a matter of we don't believe that it should be a cookie cutter approach across the state. And that's where we started pushing the legislation and pushing the conversation.
We had AWA Goodhue came and gave a presentation on seabed and asked the county board to support that with an ordinance. And so we did, because it talked about local ownership, local control, and local business, and all of that was good. Since then, we've seen it morph into something else and no longer really meet those qualifications. I, for one, would repeal the seabed status in Goodhue County, but we'll need 3 votes to do that, and I don't know that we have them right now. Wind energy is not efficient. You know, it loses money. It has to be subsidized. So if we're going for renewable energy, we need stuff that actually works. And wind energy doesn't appear to work.
The Public Utilities Commission is responsible for issuing site permits for large wind energy conversion systems. But as Christy talked about, there are statutes and rules that they must follow when they do that. When the Public Utilities Commission issued their permit, they didn't follow the rules. And so we decided that it probably was something that was right to take to the Minnesota Court of Appeals. I think it's important to understand that at the Court of Appeals, the discussion revolves around legal issues, not necessarily around factual issues. Things like shadow flicker and noise and transient voltage and some of those things are not issues that are reviewed necessarily by the Minnesota Court of Appeals. They want to know what the statutes say, what the rules say, how an administrative agency followed those rules, how did they document their decision, was it appropriate. When we went to the Court of Appeals, we said that the Public Utilities Commission basically committed an error of law, that they used the wrong requirements and standards when they made their decision. Unfortunately, the Court of Appeals didn't agree with us, and as you all know, last week they issued this week they issued their opinion that basically followed lockstep what the Public Utilities Commission had said. You have a very interesting situation going on here where you basically have 2 branches of government that are arguing with each other. You have the legislature, which has passed a law and passed a statute, and you have the Public Utilities Commission, which is part of the administrative branch, and they are interpreting this statute and trying to apply it and not necessarily, in our opinion, following what the legislature intended. It was very interesting that in our case the decision came out to be unpublished and therefore can't be used for precedential value going forward for any other projects or any other permits. There are 2 parts of the decision that I think really open the door for some additional appeal. Renewable energy projects, and there are bad renewable energy projects. The statute and the state policy on renewable energy does not require every project to be approved. PUC has come out and said that for every project above 25 megawatts, they treat them differently anyways. Why does this permit threaten the entire wind industry in the state? There are good projects and good places for wind energy project, and there are not so good places for wind energy project. Does this mean that if I want to site a wind project in downtown Minneapolis, it should get approved? It goes against the standard in the statute, and it is a direct affront to the county's right to regulate local land use. And that's why I think this thing is ripe for an additional appeal to the Supreme Court. Lastly, there's been some rumor and some information floating around that AWA is potentially trying to sell this project to another developer. That's about all I know about your last chances to act as a group. After this, it's going to be individual, okay? There's no guarantee that the Supreme Court's going to take this case up, but as I said, there's a lot of reasons why they might. One of the issues that everybody faces in a situation like this is it might not seem like it's going to be a big deal right now, and then 2 or 3 years down the road it comes and hits.
Website to help you get there. I'd encourage you to visit it often, especially the blog spot. The blog is very fun. very entertaining, but it's got some very serious information. It's usually one of the places where really hot happening news comes out first for the Coalition of Sensible Sighting. You know, why the American bald eagle? Because Goodhue County has 159 listed rare and endangered species. It's got more species that are listed than any other county in the state of Minnesota. I think if you all just look around on the back behind me at the top of all of these flag standards, on every symbol that we have for the U.S. military, everywhere you see the American bald eagle. Part of the reason for that is it is the only eagle that you will find only in North America.